somebody was getting their wig split, hit with something with weights, or stabbed, or you know, their head ran into a concrete wall or something.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
I'm always being asked to talk about Missouri State Penitentiary, the walls, as we all called it. Sometimes if we was in another camp and I was talking to somebody that was from there, we would say inside, how long were you inside for? Yeah, but that's just between people who had been there, It was, of all the prisons I've been in, it was the most violent, I have some ideals that may not have been as bad as some of the prisons you hear like out west or in other places. The New York Times, or the Times, I can't remember which magazine, named it once the bloodiest 47 acres. I mean, there was no doubt that it was violent, and it was bad when I was there, and old heads tell me that it was worse years before I got there. I have trouble believing it was the bloodiest. You hear about places like Angola and Louisiana, places out in California, and so maybe it was equal to, but I can't see it being the bloodiest. Anyway, you had to be on your toes. I mean, you had to be aware of everything. Of course, anybody who's been in high max prisons know that. That goes without saying. But there was a crazy order to it. But every day there was something happening. Somebody was getting their wig split, hit with something with weights, or stabbed, or their head ran into a concrete wall or something. And fights, and there was always this racial tension, but yet there was really no racial fights. I mean, there was once in a while, but there was not like race riots or anything, because both sides tried to keep from doing that. They may have hated one another, but they didn't want to start a race riot. They said it wasn't good for anybody, and nobody's going to come out in the winter and they're going to get locked down and all this and that. But there was a lot of hooch making back there, and I drank my share of it, although I didn't like it. I mean, it's not that I didn't like it. I didn't like getting drunk. I wanted to stay on my toes. I wanted to be aware of everything. But I did get high. There's weed everywhere, and then you had people trying to sell you stuff that wasn't weed. Just, I don't know what it was, but it was nothing. And every day, but when the guards caught you, if they caught you drunk, they would just send you to your cell because they didn't want to do paperwork. It was more relaxed back then. There was less rules, and to be honest, the guards didn't want to enforce the rules. They'd tell you, don't kill anybody on my shift. That's probably why it was so violent. There was less restrictions. We was out all day. Less rules, And I mean, over my 29 years in prison, especially after I got transferred, more and more rules were enforced, and restrictions, and not everybody out at the same time. They had a PC there that was like, I'm not even sure if it was called, if you could call it a PC. It was like another side of the prison. They had their own yard, their own weights, gym, school, all that. They had what they called red tag over there, which was like a PC inside of a PC. See, they had a soap factory there where they made soap. They had made state shoes there for a long time, and they stopped. And I think that the shoes started being made by some Texas prison. I can't. I'm not sure about that. So if somebody knows, correct me on that. The the buildings were just like big granite. They made of big granite stones. And it's a museum now. And last year I went back there, visited one of my cells. I asked them, hey, I used to be here, kind of see one of my cells. So they took me to it, and I showed my family and everything. You could stand in it, put your arms out, and touch the walls on both sides. And this was for two people. I remember walking to chow, because the walks were real narrow. And you can't walk around somebody if they're laying on the ground. Seeing people laying on the ground and happen to step over them. Now, once you got downstairs, it was wider, And then they had this long hallway that went to the chow hall. And it was called the tunnel. I don't know why it was called the tunnel, because it was just really a long hallway. And it went from one end to the other. And there was blind spots. They didn't have no cameras or nothing back in. I think they had mirrors, these round-looking mirrors up in the corners. You never walked along the wall when you went around this corner. Sometimes there's people waiting on the other side. They're either waiting to get you, or maybe they're waiting to get somebody else and accidentally get you. You get stuck just because you was in the wrong place. So you always walked out around. You made like went around so you could see. And I mean, that's just common sense. You don't walk along the wall and go around the corner, because if somebody had it out for you, they got you. Always seeing like people mopping up blood and stuff. Out in the yard though, they just throw like 5-gallon buckets of water. I finally left there, and it was funny because when I get to this Farmington Correctional Center, I was down there and in R&O, and I'd gotten used to all the noise at the walls because it's open in front, all bars. So this was quieter because there's no bars in front. You had a window in the back, a window you could open. It was just, I wasn't used to that. And it's quiet. I went out in the yard a couple of times, and I'm thinking, this is just so strange. I mean, there was trees growing, squirrels running around. You didn't see this at the walls. And so then they moved me from R&O to regular housing unit. The funny thing is, I already got a feel for the place. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that there was no violence at Farmington, because there was. It's a prison, and there was people coming there from the walls. So yeah, it was, there was violence there too, but not near as much. They put me in a cell with this guy, and he was a young guy. He was actually about my age. I was pretty young then too. Still, I think I was like 23 or something. He was maybe 21, 22. And he tells me, you have to stay aware when you go out. You stay on your toes. This place is jumping. And all right, I mean, that should be a policy anyway. Stay aware of everything. Don't walk with your head down. None of that stuff. You don't have to get in other people's business, but just kind of be aware of where you're at and where others are at. But I told him, I said, I appreciate the advice, but I came from a place that was a lot worse than this, And so he asked me, where did I come from? And I told him. He goes, oh man. He says, I didn't think nobody made it out there alive. And I said, I didn't think I was going to, but I said I didn't think nobody was either, let alone me. I'm not a tough guy. I was just trying to survive. So then he was asking me for advice, and about different things, and I told him, I said, man, you just stand up for yourself, and stay out of other people's business. But back to the walls, something about the place. You know what? They didn't have no air conditioner, no AC, and the heaters, there's 4 tiers. The heaters were all up at the top. So the people up top was complaining about heat. And when the heaters turned off, people on the bottom was freezing, But yelling for them to turn the heaters on. And I lived on the bottom walk a couple times. They called it flag. They called the bottom walk the flag for some reason. And I lived on the flag for a while. And in the wintertime, it was sometimes there'll be a thin layer of ice over your toilet water. And there was rats running around everywhere, mice, and the biggest cockroaches I've ever seen in my life. And I've never seen them since. I don't know where they got these, where they came from, how they got so big, but they're just huge, I've never seen anything like them. In the wintertime, especially if you was on the top walk, it was hot, and you just sweated, not doing anything. Just sitting in your cell, just sweat just pouring off of you. So in the wintertime, you really wanted to be on a middle walk. That was the most comfortable, middle tier. And in the summertime, you wanted to be on the bottom, But anyway, that's all I got for you today. And hope you enjoyed it. If you're subscribed, hit that notification. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Share this. And I welcome any comments. I want to hear from you guys. And thank you very much.
We are dreaming in the dark. We are nothing more than dust. Search for